Well, he was just a very funny bloke to be around. I mean, it was like being in a comedy club, working with Peter.
He's one of the funniest men that I've ever met.
He was warm, friendly, very approachable, and just an all-round decent guy.
He was this one quiet person at one time, and just a brilliant comedian at others.
He was brilliant in two disciplines, as a broadcaster and as a very, very funny man.
We go back 40 years, back to BBC radio days, about 1980. We were part of a great sports room with some big names at the time, like Peter Jones and Brian Butler, Des Lynam, Jim Rosenthal. So it was a pretty difficult, hard school to work in for young pupils, which is what we were. But Peter quite quickly became a star.
Peter looked after me. And I was young and I was nervous because I was working with my heroes, and he sensed that and he looked after me.
I think we're ready, aren't we? Why are you all dressed up anyway?
Why are you not? You look like Wurzel Gummidge.
I know I do.
What I would call a gentleman broadcaster in our business is a lot of people elbowing past each other. Not Peter. He sat back and waited to be invited.
Nobody within our industry would ever have a bad word to say about him. There are very few people like that. I mean, a lot of people divide opinion to some extent. Peter never did.
Can they find one here? It was a good try by Jones. It's Kelly! Oh, there's the answer. David Kelly!
As a commentator, he had a wonderful, rich, resonant voice, and he could capture the mood and drama of a game.
He was such a perfect football commentator. He was measured. He always lent the game a sense of importance without ever making it over dramatic.
I think he was one of the first of the commentators to do it in a conversational style, which brought in the co-commers, not just this legend, this ex-professional, but as a human, and sort of took the mickey a little bit, which was always nice because it brought it down to all our levels at home.
You never felt like he was pushing anything too hard. You also never felt that he was making his commentary about him. He was never searching for a soundbite.
And as the lads in Seville are saying, it's been a pretty sterile first half so far.
It was entertaining as well as being like a standard commentary, sort of factual and a guide.
He was having to commentate on a game from TV pictures in London of a Copa America game involving Colombia. Well, they didn't have the team sheets through, so they didn't know the names of the players. The Colombian number 8 scores a great goal, then he gets sent off, and Peter says on the commentary, well, I'll be perfectly honest with you, we haven't got the player's name sent through to us for this game, but that guy, he's had a heck of a game. Whoever he is.
Guppy now with the corner. It's Elliott! And they're back in front.
He would always be in a position to give advice where it was requested.
He was a great guiding hand to me. He was always very warm, always very encouraging. I was sort of the new kid on the block, and no, he was nothing but encouraging and supportive.
I'll never forget his kindness and his generosity, always with his time, with not just with me, but with everybody at every level within the company that we work for.
Well, that's it. It's another glorious moment for Leicester City.
Who are you then?
Well, I'm Greavesy. Who are you, Greavesy?
Well, I am Jimmy Greaves as well, my son.
Are you?
People would say, well, how can you be a commentator, but then you can impersonate Jimmy Greaves, you can impersonate Richie Benaud and Murray Walker, and he could.
Bruce also, Nice to see you, Dice.
One of our defenders is a donkey, should be on Brighton Beach, and he's the only one of our lot who's any good.
He did imitations of everybody, including me. I thought he was rubbish, but everybody else tells me it was brilliant.
I thought that sounded pretty good, actually.
You never quite hear yourself.
Has Jerry got a pilot's licence?
What was that? Sorry.
Well, a lot of people remember things that Peter did on screen. The Saint and Greavesy spoof Jimmy Greaves is well known.
Obviously, as you can see, I'm not quite my old usual self today, but the show has to go on, mate.
Well, Peter, I called him for our Christmas show in December 1990 because Jimmy Greaves was ill. I said, could you come to London tomorrow? We'll do you as the voice and Jimmy Greaves as the spitting image puppet.
That's right.
Well, it's been a funny old week for the world's most capped footballer, Peter.
It has been a funny old week, so.
And it was remarkable in the sense that It was live, it was completely spontaneous, it was unscripted.
That is a bit over the top, Ron, I said. Well, he started it, said Ron.
He was incredible. At one point, the puppeteer got stuck.
God, I've got an itch, mate. It's still going. I mean,
Peter came up with a price list. He said, "Oh God, this terrible itch," and that was completely spontaneous, completely improvised, and that was the brilliance of the guy.
I think so. I think that's the order of the day. And get this itch sorted out as well.
He saved our Christmas show in 1990.
Thank you. Hey, there you are, one for you.
He became a bit of a cult figure covering the Italian football.
Ravanelli has continued his run. Here is Ravanelli, and it has to be the first goal. Ravanelli.
Peter, I think, was Football Italia in many ways. I mean, the presentation was fantastic. Ray Wilkins was brilliant on it, but it was Peter that knitted it all together with the air of authority.
A flourishing partnership in the centre of midfield with Deschamps. That's Ravanelli's cross off Fiali! What a strike!
He and Ray Wilkins would sit down on a Sunday afternoon and have a genial chat for 90 minutes, and we would be a part of that. And I think that was a huge, and as I say, I think people often don't realise how big a factor he was.
Got Casaraghi in the middle, and Victor and Signori! Yes! Beppe Signori!
Always the commentary was laced with that sense of amusement.
Sitting in a studio in London, pretending that he was in Perugia in Italy, the cameras were so far away from the action, he could barely see what was going on, and he just came up with a perfect line. Well, the game's in Perugia, but it looks like the cameras are in Peru.
If there was a little joke to be had, he would get that out of it as well. So the commentary had a great light and shade, and he always said that the clue was being a very good guest in people's living room. Well, Peter was certainly that.
To people of my generation and younger, his voice was Sunday afternoons.
So here he is. Let's hear your appreciation. Let's hear from Peter Brackley.
Countless times we've done a lot of after dinner stuff. Normally I'd be there as a stooge.
And they sent him off to get a defibrillator, and he came back with a refrigerator.
I think at various stages we'd all been victims of Peter's one-liners and his humour.
But don't worry, I shan't be giving a long and tedious speech. Now, if they'd wanted that, they'd have got Paul Barber to do it.
But it was always done in a fantastic spirit. It was always done with a wink and a smile. Certainly no one ever took offence to anything he said. He was just one of those guys that could carry off almost any line.
Well, commentators are a funny breed. They don't like to reveal which teams they support, but Peter never had any qualms at all about letting you know he was Brighton and Hove Albion through and through.
Peter had a idea that he could benefit Albion community by putting on a show at theatre. I think it's Theatre Royal in Brighton, involving 20 or 30 ex-Albion players. It was about 6 months in the planning, and we had regular meetings. Every 2 weeks we'd have a meeting.
He was meticulous when we did our performances. He wanted to rehearse. I
thought, yeah, it's going to be a good show, but on the night, even I was astounded with it all coming together and what he was trying to get through to us in the meetings. To actually see it in reality, I was just blown away.
I mean, it was really, really clever, and it could have been a highly scripted comedy show on TV, having been edited, because it was so slick and so clever, and so the timing was so brilliant.
I'd heard Peter do after-dinner speeches on occasion, so I knew that he had an ability to do impressions. I knew he had an ability to make people laugh, but it's quite another thing to write a show for the stage from start to finish, and then to star in it, and then to sort of walk away afterwards as if it was, you know, the easiest thing in the world. I'm sure all of us will remember that show for a very long time to come when we think of Peter.
I've actually seen something that is a work of a genius, and there's no other word to describe it.
I think he'd have been surprised by this tidal wave of love and affection that has come his way since his passing.
He'll be missed immensely by everybody that knew him. I personally will miss seeing him at Brighton games. It's going to be very strange coming to the Amex and him not being sat in the press room.
He was trending on Twitter at one stage, and he'd have been amazed and amused by that if he'd have known what trending on Twitter even meant.
He was a great Albion fan, so it was always good to have him around the club, always good to have him involved in some way, and it's just such a sad loss, obviously most importantly for his family and friends, but also for this football club.
You know, a true friend to me. He you know, he's always there, always at the end of a phone, always willing to chat. I know that my life's never going to be the same.
I don't mind admitting to you, I've had floods of tears these last 10 days on more than a few occasions just thinking about him.
There are times when you just love to go back to, you know, people who were easy, kind people to get on with and just have a chat, and I will certainly miss that opportunity, that's for sure.
He'll be missed by me, dreadfully, and he'll be missed by all his friends in this area, and certainly by the broadcasting fraternity, actually, because we know how good he was.
I will miss his company, being able to sit down and chew the fat with him a great deal, and that will be the case with everybody that was fortunate enough to know him. He was a great broadcaster, but he was an even better man.
He'd always have some kind of one-liner, so, I mean, the last time I spoke to him, or one of the last times I spoke to him, I mentioned Jose Mourinho. He said, yeah, he's been banned from his local hotel now in Manchester. They won't have him there during the happy hour.
Never seems to go out, Tony. April the 14th stayed in, April the 15th stayed in, April the 16th stayed in, April the 17th had lunch with Martin Perry. Wishart stayed in.
3 old blokes have walked in the door, so straight away Peter's on it, razor sharp wit. Look, the Hatton Garden Raiders.
When you want someone famous, there's a waiting list for these people. You want Jeff Stelling from Sky, John Imberdale from the BBC to speak at your dinner. There's a 12-month wait. Gary Lineker, 18 months. Claire Balding, 3 years. So when they rang me yesterday, I said, yeah, go on, I'll do it.
There was a little bit of confusion about the transfer fee for one of the players because there were, as they explained, 1 million Turkish lira to the pound at that stage. Quick as a flash, Peter said, yeah, I was watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on Turkish TV last night and it only lasted one question.
George, of course, who spent his final season with the Albion chasing Peter Ward's tally of 36 goals in a season, but agonisingly fell just 35 short.
I'm going now, I'm getting ready. I can't take any more of this. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Well done. Is that right, chaps?
Perfect.